Hello, it's Ken Gagne with YouTube channel Gamebits with this week's IndieSider, where I play indie games and interview the developer. I'm playing Steve Jackson's and Ian Livingstone's The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. This is an original adaptation of the 1982 fantasy gamebook, developed by Tin Man Games, purveyor of many fine gamebooks such as To Be or Not to Be, which was featured on a previous episode of IndieSider. But for this game, they funded an entirely new and more visual engine on Kickstarter. Let's take a look. Let me show you how this works. There is a lot of text. I'll try not to interfere with your reading of it. I'm going to skip the tutorial and show you how the game works with my own sort of tutorial, my description. So first you have to start off by choosing a character, and the game starts with 4 available to you. And you can read about each one. They have a name, a description about their history and their unique abilities. And then it's a stamina, skill, and luck are the 3 attributes they provide, as well as various attacks, which obviously comes in handy during combat. So we have, like I said, 4 characters. These gentlemen and individuals in the background don't seem to be selectable, but they do give you advice. I'm going to go with Alexandra of Black Sand, because I love the name, I love her stamina, and I like that she's educated. My kind of person. So I'm going to select her, and it says I've chosen her to go to travel to Firetop Mountain, skip the tutorial, and off I go. And it's a little figurine that bounces along from the village into the mountain. Alright, so what is going on here? The villagers of Anvil cheered with excitement as I began my 2-day hike. Now, why am I going to this mountain? Your mysterious patron, a sorcerer known to you only as Kith, wants you to seek a massive ruby known as the Eye of the Cyclops and give it to Zagor, the warlock who rules this mountain. Okay. The citizens who live in the foothills fear Zagor and have been very reluctant to tell you anything that may help you find him. I must be on my guard. It takes 2 days to reach the mountain. Finally, I can see the eerie red coloring that gives the mountain its name. I approach a cave, a known entrance used by a local band of orcs, my hand gripping the hilt of my longsword. Your adventure begins here. And there's the entrance to the mountain. If I click on any spot from that point outward, or inward rather, it becomes black and white, or pre-inked. I can click on it to make it color again, so you get 2 different depictions of the game. I peer into the gloom. And here's the mountain, what I can see of it from the entrance. The air is cold and dark. Hearing faint scurrying to the east, I light my lantern. And this is Alexandra speaking. She says, with the smell of orc up my nose, I have a feeling I'm going to meet some formidable foes. That ruby is in this mountain somewhere, so I'm going to have to ask politely, using my sword, of course. Step warily into the darkness. And now I have a choice. I can just stand here, or I can approach the fork. And pop, pop, pop. So I'm not actually moving the character. I can't push left, right, up, or down. I just make a decision, and then the animation fills in to execute that action. So it's line of sight. You can see it's more of the mountain filled in. I see a guard to the left, so I'm going to go right, to the east. But wait, what's this? I hear footsteps ahead. Now I have 3 choices. Actually, no, 2. I can duck inside this cleft, or I can prepare to face what happens. Well, I'm not ready for combat yet, so I'm going to duck inside the cleft. I wait with bated breath. And now they're approaching me, and I can jump out and attack them. I can stay here longer, or I can leave my hiding place. So they've passed by. I can leave my hiding place now. And I come over to this door, and it won't open. So I have a choice to either kick it, charge it, or turn back. I'm going to kick it. And it says that the room actually opens into a pit. Had I charged the door, I would have fallen into the pit and taken damage. Now that I know that's a pit, do I want to go in or go back? I'm going to climb into the pit. Okay, there are 2 parts to this cave, and my education, that is unique to my character, says this is Dwarven architecture. They must have used this area for disposing of refuse easily rather than traveling through it. Alright, there are 2 caves here. I'm going to go to the left. And the remains of rats and even a half-eaten goblin lie in the corner. Ew. But also, a choice haunch of giant aardwolf meat. Well, that I'm going to grab, because you never know what might come in handy. Now, if you're trying to save on stamina, you can exit the cave at this point, but I want to demonstrate to you the other main feature of the game, which can be found in the other cave. Okay. An unpleasant melange of mushrooms and meat. I smelled better latrines and port black sand. Well, what is in here? Is there more aardwolf meat? I'm going to survey the murky cave. And it reminds me of something I've encountered before. Oh, 2 hideous slime zombies and a slime beast. Okay, now I have to fight. There's no option to run away. And this is where the game enters its other mode, which is a tactical combat mode. So I am this character. I can move within the blue areas, and after moving I can attack within the red areas. And I can also switch to a top-down view if I want. But I prefer the sort of isometric view. So here's a slime zombie with 5 skill and 3 stamina. So stamina is hit points. If I hit him for 3 damage, he'll die. Slime beast has 5, and slime zombie has 3. So 2 slime zombies, alright. So let's try moving here. And see, sometimes we move at the same time. And that demonstrated to me how the slime zombies attack. They attack the square in front of them and to the side. Now, this guy is facing me, so he might try to move to where I am. So what if I can move there first? Oh, we did try moving the same spot, and we all took our turn together. And I had higher fortitude or whatever, so I got that square and he did not. So he's probably going to try to attack me now. And this guy is probably going to try to move there. So what if I can attack that square? That didn't work. Alright, let's try that again, actually. See, I anticipated his move, and I was able to strike him. That's great. And I can now finish him off. Oh, we tried to attack each other. The dice roll, and I come out higher. So I got the damage and killed him. Now this guy, you can tell by the way he's facing, he's probably going to move there. So let's try attacking that square. Yep, got a free hit in. And let's do one more hit and kill him. We're probably going to clash, and I'm probably going to win, because I'm awesomer. Now, so this guy cannot attack right in front of him, it seems. And I wonder why he's staying there. Oh, maybe he can attack. Maybe he has multiple attacks. Oh, I won that by a long shot. Oh, he's trying to get away. But I'm right there with you, buddy. Oh, trying to move again? No? Oh, I moved into his attack zone. That was dumb. You can actually see how many hit points he has by this little ring at the bottom here. One more, and I got him. Okay. Oh, that was a draw. That was a bummer. Alright, just one more. Come on, I can do this. Got him. So I collected some souls, and the more souls I get, back in town I can use that to unlock more characters. However, I did take quite a bit of damage there. I lost 8 of my 18 stamina, so I'm almost half dead. And I got nothing for it. There's nothing else in this pit, which is kind of a bummer. So it seems like a dead end, except I got some meat. And I can't go back to the pit once I leave. There's no turning around. So at this point, unless I want to quit the game, the only choice is to walk straight on. I want to show you one more thing before I bring on this week's guests. Oh, there is a bad guy. He's an orc in leather armor. Let's approach him, because that's my only choice. Now, do I want to wake and interrogate him, or try to tiptoe past? I think I can handle a single orc. Let's try interrogating him. That was always my favorite part of being in the Air Force, which I wasn't. You prod the orc awake with your pommel, and he leaps to your feet, flailing for his weapon, which you swiftly kick out of reach. Ha! I speak common, and I seek the eye of the Cyclops. But he doesn't recognize me, or he does recognize me, but he does not speak my language. So I just tie him up and gag him. Thanks for nothing, buddy. Now here are 2 hounds. Each beast is chained to the cave wall, secured to their thick brass collars. Those poor dogs. They cannot reach me, but their chains are long enough that I should be able to approach. I will not be able to avoid their slathering jaws. But I know that I can feed them. I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to feed them. Every good dog deserves to be fed. Now again, my education tells me that they like giant aardwolf meat. And I can throw them that meat that I found instead of my own meat. And they start eating their food, and I can sneak past without getting damaged. So now you know the best way to start the game without taking damage. Oh, what's that? Is that a bench I see? Now this is sort of like the stools in Skyward Sword, The Legend of Zelda, where I can just sit down and rest and regain health. And I can also eat some food to regain even more health. I'm not sure how many provisions I have. 10 stamina, that's great. Let's see. Oh, provisions, I have 4 left. Okay, it's good to know. I have lantern, backpack, and rope. And let's see, I will open the door. And in this room, I love the way it fills in bit by bit. There is a table with a small wooden box underneath it. And there's also a green-skinned orc asleep on a straw mattress. I'm going to try to sneak in and get the box without waking the orc. Sometimes you have to roll against your luck. And every time you do that, you lose a luck point. So eventually you will literally run out of luck. But this time I didn't have to test it. I got the box, I opened it up, it was not trapped. And I got a cache of gold pieces and a small mouse. 4 gold pieces. Yay. And the mouse scurries away. Alright, let me show you what happens when you die. I'm going to follow the passage. Now there is another door here I'm going to open. There's another box under the desk. I'm going to open that box. My education tells me that the runes translate to Snake Surprise. If you open this, you get the Peanut Brittle achievement. And yet, you still open it, even knowing what it says inside. Now I have to fight the snakes. Great. Now these snakes can only attack diagonally, so I'm going to make myself available to be struck, because I want you to see what happens when you die. But first, they have to move. Oops. Apparently I need to move. Alright, what happens if I stay... Oh, see, now I'm poisoned. I take 1 damage each round for the next 2 rounds. And so that is going to add up pretty quickly. Oh. Oh. Come on, guys, come eat me. There seems to be no way to pass my turn. So I have to either move or attack. It's a quick jab. I've never seen that before. Oh, the poison wore off. But I am about half dead. Quick jab. Oh. Hit me. There we go. Now I'm poisoned again. And he's gonna hit me. Nope. The poison hit me. Sorry guys, I have to keep moving. That's the nature of the game. There's also no option to flee, you will notice. I can't get away from this battle. I am stuck here. Hey, great, they both hit me. And I'm poisoned, so I'm about to die. I'm overcome by my enemies. Oh dear, the mouse has claimed another victim. But I have a resurrection stone. It'll return me to the last bench. And I'm not going to keep any souls I've gained since then, which in this case is none. And you only get to do this 3 times per quest. You only have 3 resurrection stones. So yes, I'm going to say, even though I'm right near the beginning, I just want to show you how that works. And right now I'm right back to here. Just before I opened the first box and got the mouse and the cache of gold. So at this point, I'm going to continue adventuring while I speak with some of the creators of this game. Joining me today on the podcast is Neil Rennison, founder and creative director of Tin Man Games. Hello, Neil.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, good. I've got coffee in my stomach.
That's right, because as we're speaking, it's evening Thursday for me, morning Friday for you.
It is. It's, yeah, nice and early-ish.
And also joining us is Mr. Ed Blanch, technical artist at Tin Man Games. Hello, Ed.
Hello.
Are you also a coffee fiend?
Caffeine fiend, certainly.
Yes, caffeine of the fizzy soda variety.
Ah, I see how it is. Very good.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of bitter.
So at the time of this recording, it's a very interesting intersection. Yesterday, your game came out, and tomorrow, at least as far as my timetable goes, it is the first day of PAX West, and you two are stuck talking to me.
Yeah. We're here in the office doing work, and then we have 2 other staff members who've flown over to Seattle who are probably at this very moment setting up the booth, ready for the influx of crowds tomorrow.
And one of those individuals will be Mr. Ben Cosmina, who's been on this show before to talk about one of your other games, To Be or Not To Be.
Yes, Ben will be there, hawking our wares, doing a splendid job, I'm sure.
And you're stuck at home in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, we're here fighting the fires, fixing the bugs, and replying to all the press emails and all the forum posts and all the interesting stuff. Yeah.
Fun. So, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain is your latest game, but you are a company that has published dozens of games before, most of them existing in the genre of gamebook. For our listeners who aren't familiar with that, what exactly is a gamebook?
So a gamebook essentially is it's a thing from probably around the 1980s. You had the Choose Your Own Adventure series, which I know was really popular in the States. And off of the Choose Your Own Adventure series, another genre sort of evolved, which was this game book. And a game book is essentially the choice-based narrative of those books, but with a game level added in, such that you create a character to take you through the story. Usually you have to roll up that character in the same way that you create a character in Dungeons & Dragons. So you'd have stats, and you'd roll dice to create those stats. And then as you go through the story, as well as making choices in the story, you would meet creatures and monsters, and you'd have to fight them using dice usually to get past them. So,
for somebody who went into this game completely blind, like I did at first, the Warlock of Firetop Mountain seems like a classic dungeon crawler like you would find in early Dungeons & Dragons books like Keep on the Borderlands or the Isle of Dread, but it turns out it actually has quite the lineage. It is an adaptation of a 34-year-old game book. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is the game book that started, I guess, the whole thing, especially in the UK and Europe. The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, it sold millions of copies. It was for 1982, I think it came out. It was huge in the school playgrounds, and it was a bit of a seminal moment because Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, who obviously created it, they were the guys that started Games Workshop, and they were the guys that flew over to the States and first met Gary Gygax and signed the first European distribution deal with Dungeons & Dragons. So, it's all these people were creating all this stuff around this time, sort of late 70s, early 80s, and so the Warlock it's a really huge deal, and we're really, really proud to have been working.
So how much leeway did you have in adapting such a storied and seminal work? Were you able to be creative and inject some original content, or were you bound to stick to the script?
It's very difficult when you come across something like this because, people recognise it for what it is, which is this lovely thing from their childhoods. So what we have to do is we kind of have to take that and we kind of have to say, look, 34 years in the past now, what can we do with this to try and slot it into, a new generation of game player, while keeping those kind of nostalgic ties to the past for the older gamer. So we did make some changes. We've added some new things. One of the key things we did was we removed the fact that the tagline for the series was "You are the hero." And while you're still the hero, you're actually controlling a different hero this time. You actually get to choose your own heroes with their own background. So it's kind of like a pre-rolled D&D character that you're taking through the adventure, rather than rolling up your own characters and stuff.
So that way there are multiple storylines that may not have been present in the original book?
Exactly. Look, one of the negatives of the old game book system is that replayability was never great. Once you played through the books a few times, you were done and you moved on to the next book. So one of the ways we tried to combat that is by doing exactly that. By if you're taking a different character, a different hero into the mountain, you are going to have a slightly different experience than if you took another character, which that's not just narratively. So obviously the story changes, their quests change, but also their combat options change. They have different attack patterns, do different things and deal with situations in different ways.
Part of this book's story lineage includes previous adaptations as computer games, one of which was for the computer you grew up with, the ZX Spectrum. Did you grow up playing this game?
I actually did play this game, yeah. I actually had it on my Becky 48K, as we used to call it back then. It was one of a bunch of games that adventure games I used to play. Happy days. I do miss that little computer with its rubber keys.
It must be very strange to be making a modern version of a game you played as a kid.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It is, sometimes you have to pinch yourself, and I do have to remind myself sometimes that I'm dabbling with things that as a kid I could never have dreamed of dabbling in. I get to work with my heroes basically, which is really quite nice. So yeah, rather special.
Now, the ZX isn't the only adaptation of this game. More recently, it came out for the PlayStation 3. Isn't it? I mean, the PlayStation 3 was not that long ago. Isn't it a bit soon to be remaking such a recent game?
Yes and no. Look, so you'll know that we've already done some adaptations of the Fighting Fantasy series ourselves for iOS and Android, and also did some on desktop computers too. And if you look at what we've done, we actually chose a lot of the later books in the series to adapt, just because we wanted to kind of give a little bit of distance between what we were going to do and other releases, because it wasn't just the PlayStation. There was another iOS version done by Blue Bubble, and we felt that a few years had passed, and we could probably give it a shot now. And also, those adaptations were a lot closer to the original source material, and they played a lot more like the original paperback books. And we knew that what we were going to create was something far different from that. And we were, the visuals, the way it was going to be sort of laid out, the redesign. So we felt that with a bit of time that had elapsed and the amount of changes we were making to the original design of the game, that it was enough for us to be doing.
And speaking of the visuals, let's turn it over to your partner in crime, Mr. Ed Blanch, for a moment. Hi, Ed.
Hello.
So this game, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, went on Kickstarter because it's not like any other game book that Tin Man Games has done before. It basically has a whole new engine, is that correct?
Yeah. Basically, Tin Man sat down and we reworked we have sort of two components that go into the structure of it, one of which is the writing component, which is the program that the writers use in order to put together the classic kind of game book format. And then we had to create a engine that would allow us to hook that into something that was obviously the visuals that you see in the game. Whereas the previous titles were much more page-oriented, so there was no physical location that matched to an actual page text. So we had to keep a figurine synchronized with where you were in the game, essentially. So in that respect, we did have to basically build a whole new engine to fit it.
And what impact does this new level of visual detail that you've brought to your game engine, what impact does that have on the narrative? Like, were you able to tell a story that you weren't able to before, or is it the same story, just visualized in a new way?
Really, it's the same story visualized in a new way, but actually, if anything, it did throw open a couple of issues that you don't necessarily always visualize as part of the original text, or even in these. It's as when you're reading something in text, there is a degree of imagination that lets you fill in some of the blanks, and in these particular contexts, when you actually have to put images in it, you can sometimes discover that there are a few quite interesting blanks that you need to fill in when you're left, because you can see it, you can see everything, everywhere that you've been and where it relates to everywhere else. And whereas a text can hand wave some of that away by saying, well, you walk down a corridor, it could have really been anything down the corridor, but now you actually have to stipulate, well, how long was that corridor? How far away was this room before that room? You've got, if the hall is a big room full of orcs, then it actually takes, the character longer to get past it to go to the next room. So sometimes you'll end up with logical inconsistencies that can exist in a book that can't exist in real life. So you have to try and marry the two of them together so you don't end up creating something too confusing.
Right, so I imagine that probably just like with the old Dungeons & Dragons games, you probably busted out your graph paper and sketched exactly how everything would fit together.
Yeah, actually, we have on our wall behind us, we've got a giant whiteboard wall, and we have a drawing of the entire dungeon itself. And it's interesting that you talk about that as well, because we had to do a lot of bits and pieces where we looked at rooms and went, well, we can't have this can't, like, we had to move some rooms around because we ended up saying, well, the dining room is smaller than the antechamber that leads into it, and things like that, just to try and insert sometimes a little bit of logic, or you'd end up with the kitchen on the complete other side of the map, the dining room. And so we did do a lot of bits and pieces of trying to merge them together and draw them out. So we do have quite a reasonably detailed map now on our wall of the entire game.
It's now covered in scribble, all sorts of things. We've been working hard on it over the last few weeks. We've been making notes left, right, and centre to get things working.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if that's a whiteboard, it's likely to be erased. I hope you take a photo of it first.
Oh, we will.
Oh, we will do, yeah.
I'm not going to let that. A big part of what we did in the original setup is we took the original map. So a lot of people who'd played the game had drawn their own maps. And there was a semi-official one that I think the community had basically come to the conclusion of. And we sat down and really kind of stretched it and expanded it to fit all of the new stuff that we wanted, while trying to keep the what the original was about. So that it was basically, we took a lot of the original locations and we made extra room between them for more stuff, basically.
We also brought in the very early on in the project the skills of a writer called Jonathan Green, who is a bit of an expert in Fighting Fantasy. He's actually written a bunch of later Fighting Fantasy books. He recently wrote the official history of Fighting Fantasy called You Are the Hero, and his knowledge was pretty invaluable at that early stage, just to try and make a bit more sense of this crazy mountain that we're about to redesign.
So longtime fans of fighting fantasy in general and the Warlock of Firetop Mountain specifically will find a lot to like and a lot of familiar ground in your adaptation.
Oh yeah, like this is it's like a love letter to Fighting Fantasy. You know, every change we've made, anything we've added or changed or adjusted, any bit of new content that's being created, new characters we've introduced, everything fits within the lore of the world that the old fans all know. And we're really proud of that. It's been something that we've been very careful to get right. And it's also been a lot of fun, you know, sifting through a lot of the old source books and you know, pulling out obscure characters from Strange Adventures and placing them in, you know, back to the forefront of the series again.
It's kind of like Disney Infinity or the Lego games, where you're just throwing all these different characters together and letting them interact.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been playing a lot of Disney Infinity recently with my kids. They love it.
Well, enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah.
So speaking of the characters, it wasn't just the dungeon you had to now visualize, it was also the inhabitants. And I understand that the playable characters are based on figurines, is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the things that we in the very early days of redesigning this game book, which is essentially just a paperback book, we had to take it to this new video game level. We thought of a number of ways we were going to do this, and ultimately we concluded that creating this kind of pseudo board game approach would work really well, because, you know, game books are essentially solo Dungeons & Dragons games. People associate tabletop figurines and stuff with that sort of style of gameplay. And then because we were having multiple characters you could choose, it just naturally fell into place that, hey, you're going to have a figurine for each of these characters, and that's going to become your figurine for your adventure. We looked at how we could implement that, and we did that a number of ways. The first way that we did it is we did a deal with a company in the UK called Otherworld Miniatures that actually create real physical fantasy miniatures. And we got a 3D scanner, and Ed here sat many hours and 3D scanned the little miniature figurines in, and then resculpt them slightly, and then paint them. We also had some other artists build brand new figurines from scratch that sort of match that old look, even down to the way they painted them. And then what was the other one?
We sculpted some in-house, and we outsourced the other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We also did variations on the existing ones, so we would take some of the other world images that were nicely sculpted and create a couple of new variations, so that we had to fill a couple of the extras.
If a player of Warlock of Firetop Mountain grows particularly attached to a character, is there an actual figurine that they can purchase?
For the main characters, not, because most of the main characters we had to base on either fighting fantasies and very few of them have figurines that are specifically have been created. Because in a lot of cases, like if, for instance, the Land of Lowen character is based on a figurine from a board game that's no longer made, and there's a bunch of different characters in there that are. But a lot of the monsters in the actual game you'd be able to purchase from Otherworld Miniatures. Yeah. But yeah, the main characters, unfortunately.
And some of the monsters that appeared in the original illustrations of the books, obviously there's no figurines for those, and we actually got those made bespoke. So the actual miniatures match the illustrations, Russ Nicholson's original illustrations. So they look really great.
Yeah, I put a huge emphasis on making sure that we replicated the techniques that we used to paint miniatures in real life. So we shied away from using kind of classic textures, and everything was digitally painted, but it was done through digital paint, not through kind of texture application. So I used a literal kind of digital paintbrush to sit there and put down base coats and then layer it up over it layer by layer until we got the kind of that hand painted.
And I understand you'll be adding more player characters too as DLC, is that right?
Yeah, so at the minute there's 12 in there. We've got 2 packs of DLC planned to come in a few months' time, and then we'll also be adding some freebies in there as well, so people that bought the game get some new heroes to take on quests.
How many characters are you expecting to have total?
That's a good question. We're definitely looking to probably double the current number, so up into the early 20s, I would say. But sky's the limit. Like, if people want more, we'll make more. I mean, and the great thing about these characters is that because they each have a different adventure, we can add new content to suit that particular character, to the point where we have got early plans of actually, creating new parts of the mountain which are yet undiscovered, which we'll be able to, go and visit with certain characters. So, but it all depends on how hungry our audience is really for it. We're gonna do what we've got planned, and then we'll see from there. Really.
Oh, that's exciting. It hadn't occurred to me that in addition to the statistics and the skills and also the way that they interact with the mountain to cause new storylines, it didn't occur to me that you'd be adding to the mountain itself. That's exciting.
Yeah, and we've also got, some characters at the moment, all the characters, they enter the mountain through the entrance, the bog standard entrance that you always enter the mountain. But, for example, we've got a half-giant lady adventurer she's very, very cool, and she chooses to enter the mountain in a different way. She actually will come in via a different entrance. So, her perception of the mountain, how it's laid out, is going to be very different from one of the adventurers that comes in through the standard entrance.
So in addition to all the visuals that you've had to create for this new engine, your previous game engine that was featured on this podcast, when it was used for To Be or Not To Be, had some excellent voice acting, some great audio. And that was a stretch goal for the Warlock of Firetop Mountain when it was on Kickstarter, but not one that was met. Do you think you'll see voice acting in future applications of this game engine?
Look, we would love to have voice acting in. It would really add to it, and I know some people would prefer it. Again, it comes down to costs for us. We're a small indie team. our resources are always very, very tight. Unfortunately, we didn't meet the Kickstarter goal for the voiceover. So again, it was something we couldn't put in. But again, if the fans are hungry for it and the game goes well, then why not? We'd love it. We would love to just keep adding to it.
Because the previous game, To Be or Not to Be, that was essentially the result of a Kickstarter that Ryan North ran, which earned over $500,000, right?
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really successful.
It's very much a matter of perspective of, he ran one of the most popular publishing Kickstarter projects of all time, which led to it becoming a game as well. His original goal was just to make a choose-your-own-adventure game. And here you are running a Kickstarter for the game itself. The game is the core product. It's not an add-on to somebody else's Kickstarter.
Exactly. And we raised $50,000, which is significantly smaller. And, a lot of that money, once you paid your Kickstarter fees, once you paid for the various things you promised in, backer rewards and things, that money goes straight back into actually the hard core development of the game. In our case, we were able to do a lot more art. That was the whole point, that we wanted to add more miniatures and give ourselves a bit more time just to make it look really great. That was really, really important.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good Kickstarter. You say you raised so much less than To Be or Not to Be, but your original goal was $15,000 Australian, and you raised $54,000. That's great.
Yeah, we were blown away. It was really, really, amazing. The whole idea of the Kickstarter, it was just to raise a few more bits of funds just to get some more art done, and subsequently, because we got a little bit more, we were able to get even more art done, which is why the game, I would say, is probably, a third bigger as a result of that. We've been able to really expand on it. Yeah, the coloured illustrations. We've got brand new illustrations from Russ Nicholson, the original artist. We were just able to really just add to it in ways that we couldn't have dreamed of doing otherwise.
And all that work to make this game engine is not going to be a one-shot. You're going to make other games using this engine as well. Yes,
that's the hope. The plan is we'd really like to work on Death Trap Dungeon next, which is another very famous addition to the Fighting Fantasy series. It's arguably even more famous than Warlock of Firetop Mountain in the sort of community. Yeah, City of Thieves is another one that gets asked for quite a lot, and Citadel of Chaos. So look, if I had my way, I would make them all. But obviously, there needs to be a demand there. We need to be able to do it cost effectively. So we'll see. So far, so good. We've had a really great response from the game being released. So fingers crossed, it will continue to go great.
Yeah, this is actually something I was going to bring up later, which is Death Trap Dungeon is a game that I reviewed when it came out for PS1 in April of '98, and I remember it being terrible.
I can't comment.
Very diplomatic. That's probably the best answer you could give. I will say, however, that I hope that Tin Man Games' adaptation of Death Trap Dungeon is an improvement upon my previous experience.
Well, if you enjoy Warlock, when we get onto Death Trap Dungeon, it will be in the same vein, although we already have some plans of how we're going to adapt the game to be a bit different. So, watch this space.
Oh, good. I have two quick gameplay questions about Warlock. So, I grew up playing games like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, and I know that when my hit points get too low, my last-ditch effort to survive that encounter is to run away. There doesn't seem to be an option to flee in Warlock, though. What am I supposed to do? Just die?
Absolutely, it's Fighting Fantasy. That's what happens.
Yeah, well, in the classic books, our adaptation of the original books don't really give you much option for being able to flee. They were, fight or die, basically. Unless it's a specific sneaking option and something that we put into the text.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the narrative forces you onward all the time, and that's we kept that as you know, close to the original as possible. The problem with choose your own adventure narrative is as soon as you even remotely sandbox it, so giving you the option to flee, to go back to the previous room you were in, opens up a whole world of complication. And in fact, what we did actually sandbox this version of Warlock more than the original book. There are areas which you can go back and forth in, and it will adjust for the fact that the narrative will change for the fact that you might have been in that room previously, and there might be things that you did in that room that have subsequently changed. So, but to do that on a whole scale, like have a completely sandbox, choose your own adventure story, it would be, that wouldn't be fun.
Or at least very difficult to do it within the confines of what a kind of a game book is about. At that point, you, to some degree, completely drifted away from being a game book at all.
Yeah.
Because it no longer becomes about the written decisions and the word descriptions of the room, because all of a sudden everything that you do and create has to become genericized as a consequence of this text that we've written has to work correctly every time you enter this room. Or you have to create, as Neil was pointing out, it gets exponential how many different variations you have to be able to write of every descriptor. So in order to try and keep it as actually a game book as opposed to something which is more kind of like a sandboxy, we had to keep it fairly constrained.
Well, that's interesting what you said about the narrative constantly driving you forward, because that's another tactic I learned from Dungeons & Dragons that doesn't work here, which is that you slowly make your way deeper into the dungeon, and then retreat, heal yourself, go back in, go deeper, go back, heal yourself. And in Warlock of Firetop Mountain, there was very early on, I had a bad encounter with a pair of snakes, and I wanted to just go back to that bench that was right around the corner, and I couldn't.
Did you use a resurrection stone?
Yeah, those seem to be so rare that I've been hesitant to do so.
So you need to use your resurrection stone. And I'd also advise when you do find a bench, rest and eat provisions. You get more stamina back then. And the other thing with these kind of game books as well is that a lot of the unlike other RPGs, a lot of the things about these things that you need to kind of work out where things are and learn some of the best paths to take to acquire certain items, to do certain things. And a little bit of trial and error. What we try and do in the narrative is we try and feed you with clues. If you look at the characters, they have little moments where they think to themselves about things, and sometimes they will give you little clues in there about what you should be doing or where you should be going. So hopefully, it's not too painful.
Okay, I'll have to go back in and give it another go. Last question. On the Kickstarter, you indicated that this game would be coming out in late 2016 for mobile devices, and many other games in your library are available on those platforms. Can we expect to see Warlock on iOS and Android?
So the plan at the moment is when the crew have got back from Seattle, we're going to be probably looking at doing an iOS version of the game. There are some potential obstacles that we're going to need to get around to make that work in the way that we need to, so we've got to look into that. But yeah, we're kind of standing by an iOS version either end of the year, probably more likely early 2017. As for Android, we'll see. Again, Android becomes more complex again because the sheer complication, the sheer amount of devices out there that you have to support. For a small team like us, it can become quite expensive very quickly. So we'll see.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you have so much in plan for the future. Additional DLC for this game, additional platforms for this game, additional games in this engine like Death Trap Dungeon. I'm really excited to see the future for Tin Man Games, so I appreciate you giving us a little glimpse into the creation of this game and what's in store. Thank you. Just give us one last reminder where to find you and your game online.
Okay, so you can go direct to Steam, do a search for the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, you'll find games there. We're also available on the Humble Store for your game a bit more DRM free. you can go to our blog at timandgames.com.au, and we have another site called gamebookadventures.com, which has a list of all our other games and apps that are available on a whole load of devices.
Excellent, and there will be links to all those in the show notes found at IndieSider.net. Neil and Ed, thank you so much for your time.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you.